The February wind cut through Manhattan's Upper East Side like a knife through silk, carrying with it the promise of snow that hadn't yet fallen. Olivia Barnes pulled her worn pea coat tighter as she hurried down East 72nd Street, her breath forming small clouds in the freezing air. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pristine sidewalks, and somewhere in the distance, a taxi horn echoed through the urban canyon. She was running late. Again. At 24 years old, Olivia had perfected the art of stretching every minute, every dollar, every ounce of energy she possessed. Between her double shifts at Valentino's, her online classes in chemistry, and the constant weight of student debt pressing down on her shoulders, sleep had become a luxury she could barely afford. But tonight was different. Tonight, she needed to be sharp. Valentino's rose before her like a beacon of old-world elegance, its burgundy awning and golden script promising an experience that cost more than Olivia made in a month. The restaurant had stood on this corner for 43 years, a fixture of wealth and discretion, where business deals were sealed over 20-year-old wines and conversations were protected by thick walls and loyal staff. "You're 8 minutes late, Barnes," Marcus Chen, the floor manager, said without looking up from his clipboard as Olivia pushed through the staff entrance. His tone was clipped, professional, carrying the weight of someone who'd worked in fine dining long enough to know that 8 minutes could mean the difference between perfection and chaos. "I'm sorry, Marcus. The subway? I don't need excuses. I need you on the floor. Section 3 tonight." He finally looked up, his expression softening slightly. "And Olivia? Be invisible. We have special guests this evening." The way he said "special guests" made her stomach tighten. In the 3 years she'd worked at Valentino's, she'd learned that certain phrases carried hidden meanings. Special guests meant men in expensive suits who spoke in low voices. It meant private dining rooms, where the doors stayed closed. It meant the kind of clientele who tipped extraordinarily well, but expected absolute discretion in return. It meant people you didn't ask questions about. Olivia changed quickly in the staff locker room, trading her street clothes for the crisp white blouse and black slacks that constituted Valentino's uniform. She tied her auburn hair back into a neat bun, applied minimal makeup to hide the exhaustion etched beneath her eyes, and checked her appearance in the mirror. Professional, forgettable, invisible. Exactly what she needed to be. The main dining room was already humming with the evening's energy when she emerged. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light across white tablecloths, and the subtle notes of a jazz piano drifted from the corner where Raymond, the house pianist, coaxed melodies from the gleaming Steinway. The air was thick with the aroma of expensive cuisine, truffle risotto, herb-crusted lamb, fresh bread from the kitchen's brick oven. But beneath it all, Olivia detected something else, something sharper, tension. She'd always had an unusually acute sense of smell, a trait her father used to call her superpower during her childhood. Dr. James Barnes had been a toxicologist, a man who dedicated his life to understanding the invisible threats that could hide in plain sight. He'd taught her to identify substances by scent alone, turning their weekend afternoons into impromptu chemistry lessons that seemed like games. "The nose knows, Liv," he'd say, holding up vials of various compounds. "Most people go through life only half aware of what surrounds them. But if you pay attention, really pay attention, the world tells you its secrets." That was before the accident, before she'd found herself alone at 21 with a mountain of debt and dreams of medical school that felt increasingly like fantasy, before she'd learned that sometimes the world's secrets were better left undiscovered. "Olivia, table 12 needs water," called Sofia Rodriguez, the senior waitress who'd taken Olivia under her wing during those first overwhelming weeks. Sofia was 43, a single mother of 2 who'd been at Valentino's for 15 years. She moved through the dining room with the grace of a dancer anticipating needs before they were spoken. "On it," Olivia replied, grabbing a crystal pitcher from the service station. The evening unfolded with its usual rhythm. Appetizers delivered, wine poured, courses explained in the careful language of upscale dining. Olivia found her stride, slipping into the focused state that made the hours pass more quickly. She was refilling water glasses at table 9 when the front door opened, bringing with it a gust of cold air and an immediate shift in the room's atmosphere. 3 men entered, and conversation seemed to dim around them. The man in the center commanded attention without effort. He was perhaps 40 years old, tall and solid, with iron gray hair swept back from a strong face. His charcoal suit was impeccably tailored, probably custom-made on Savile Row, and his movements carried the confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Michael Rourke. Even Olivia, who made it her business to remain ignorant of such things, knew the name. He was accompanied by two others. The first was younger, maybe 35, with dark hair and the lean build of an athlete. He scanned the room constantly, his eyes missing nothing. A bodyguard or enforcer, Olivia guessed. The second was older, perhaps 50, with silver hair and the kind of face that suggested he smiled rarely and meant it even less. Mr. Rourke, welcome back. Giovanni Ferrara, Valentino's owner, materialized from somewhere in the back, his Italian accent thick with warmth and respect. Your usual table is prepared. Please this way. The private dining room. Of course. Olivia busied herself with clearing table 7, trying not to watch as the group disappeared through the mahogany doors at the back of the restaurant, but she felt Marcus's hand on her shoulder. You're serving them tonight, he said quietly. Her stomach dropped. Marcus, I've never worked the private rooms before. Maybe Sophia should. Sophia requested the night off 2 hours ago. Family emergency. His expression was unreadable. You're capable, Olivia. Just remember what I said. Be invisible. See nothing. Hear nothing. Do your job and nothing more. Understood? She nodded, her mouth suddenly dry. The private dining room was a sanctuary of discretion, soundproofed and elegant, with dark wood paneling and oil paintings of Tuscan landscapes. A single table dominated the space, set for 4 with Valentino's finest china and crystal. The men were already seated when Olivia entered with menus and the wine list. Good evening, gentlemen, she said, her voice steady despite the nervous energy coursing through her. My name is Olivia, and I'll be taking care of you this evening. May I start you with something to drink? Michael Rourke looked up at her, and for a moment his blue eyes assessed her with an intensity that made her want to step back. Then he smiled, a practiced expression that didn't quite reach those eyes. The 2005 Brunello di Montalcino, he said, his voice deep and measured. And water. Still not sparkling. Excellent choice, sir. I'll retrieve that immediately. As she turned to leave, she heard the older man speak. Are we certain about tonight, Michael? The terms seem... We'll discuss it when our fourth arrives. Rourke interrupted smoothly. Patience, Vincent. Olivia closed the door behind her, her heart pounding. She didn't want to know what deal they were discussing. Didn't want to be anywhere near whatever business brought men like Michael Rourke to places like this. In the wine cellar, she located the Brunello, a bottle that cost more than her monthly rent, and carefully carried it upstairs along with the water. The sommelier, Thomas, usually handled the private rooms, but he was dealing with a crisis at table 15, so the responsibility fell to her. Back in the private room, a fourth man had arrived. He was younger than the others, perhaps 32, with sharp features and hands that drummed constantly against the table. Nervous energy radiated from him. Ah, the wine, Rourke said as Olivia entered. Marco, this is a 05 Brunello. You'll appreciate it. Marco, the nervous one, barely glanced at her as she presented the bottle for Rourke's approval. Following protocol, she opened it with practiced efficiency, poured a small amount into Rourke's glass for tasting, and waited. This was when it happened. As she leaned forward to pour, positioning herself at the proper angle, a scent reached her nostrils. It was subtle, almost imperceptible beneath the wine's complex bouquet of dark fruit and oak. But it was there, a faint metallic bitterness, like crushed almonds mixed with something chemical. Sharp. Wrong. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. Cyanide has a distinctive smell, Liv. Bitter almonds. Most people can't detect it, but about 40% of the population has the genetic ability. If you ever smell that in food or drink, trust your instincts. Time seemed to slow. Rourke's hand was reaching for the glass, raising it toward his lips. The others were watching him, waiting for his approval before their own glasses would be poured, and Olivia stood frozen, the bottle still in her hands, her mind racing through impossible calculations. If she said nothing, Michael Rourke would drink, and if her nose was right, if that scent meant what she thought it meant, he would be in serious trouble within minutes. If she spoke up, she'd be accusing someone at this table of tampering with the wine. She'd be inserting herself into something dangerous, something that could follow her home, to her apartment, to her life. But if she did nothing, and a man became seriously ill in front of her, she'd be complicit in something she couldn't live with. The glass was at Rourke's lips. Sir! The word burst from her before she could stop it, loud and sharp. Her hand jerked forward, and the bottle tipped, sending a splash of deep red wine across the pristine white tablecloth. I'm so sorry. I'm incredibly clumsy tonight. The wine spread across the table like blood, soaking into the fabric, dripping onto the floor. Rourke had pulled back, the glass still in his hand, untouched. The other men jumped to their feet, brushing droplets from their expensive suits. What the hell? Marco's voice was sharp with anger. I apologize, gentlemen, I'm so sorry, Olivia stammered, grabbing napkins and dabbing uselessly at the spreading stain. Her hands were shaking. Not entirely an act. Please, let me get fresh linens. And another bottle, of course. Complimentary. Relax, Marco. Rourke's voice cut through the chaos. Calm and controlled. He was watching Olivia with those penetrating blue eyes, his expression thoughtful. Accidents happen, although... He picked up the wine glass that he'd nearly drunk from, studying it in the light. This bottle seems fine otherwise, shame to waste it. No. Again, the word escaped before Olivia could censor herself. 3 pairs of eyes fixed on her. She forced herself to breathe, to think. I believe I saw something floating in the bottle, sir. A piece of cork, perhaps, or sediment. Given the quality of this wine, I'd prefer to bring you a fresh bottle rather than risk compromising your experience. It was plausible. Just plausible enough. Rourke set the glass down slowly. How conscientious, he said, and something in his tone suggested he didn't quite believe her. Vincent, what do you think? Should we trust our waitress's dedication to quality? Vincent, the older man with the hard face, was staring at Olivia with open suspicion. I think, he said carefully, that we should examine this bottle more carefully, and perhaps have a conversation with our new friend here about what she really saw. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. That won't be necessary. Marcus's voice came from the doorway. Olivia had never been so relieved to see her manager. I apologize for the disruption, Mr. Rourke. Olivia is one of our most reliable staff members, but everyone has an off night. Please allow me to personally handle your service for the remainder of the evening. Actually, Rourke said, his eyes never leaving Olivia's face, I'd prefer if she stayed. But yes, bring us a fresh bottle, and fresh linens, and perhaps, he paused, a slight smile playing at his lips. Perhaps you could explain to me, Olivia, how one develops such a refined palate for wine quality. You're, what, 24? 25? 24, sir. And yet you can detect cork contamination by sight from several feet away. Impressive. There was a challenge in those words. A test. Olivia felt the weight of multiple gazes on her, assessing, calculating. She thought of her tiny apartment in Brooklyn, of her remaining student loans, of the classes she'd already paid for this semester. She thought of her father, who'd taught her to identify poisons, who'd died in what the police called an accident, but what she'd never quite believed was just bad luck. She thought of the bitter almond scent rising from that wine glass. My father was a scientist, sir, she said quietly. He taught me to pay attention to details, to trust my senses. In his line of work, being observant could mean the difference between, she paused, choosing her words carefully, between success and failure. Something shifted in Rourke's expression. Recognition, perhaps, or respect. A scientist, how interesting. What field? Chemistry, sir, specifically toxicology. The room fell silent. Even the sound of the restaurant beyond seemed to fade. Marco had gone very still, his earlier nervous energy frozen. Vincent's eyes narrowed. And Michael Rourke leaned back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face. Toxicology, he repeated softly. How remarkably convenient. I'll get those fresh linens immediately, Olivia said, desperate to escape the suffocating tension. And the new bottle. Wait, Rourke held up one hand. Before you go, this contaminated bottle, I'd like to keep it for quality control purposes. We wouldn't want the restaurant serving compromised wine to other guests, would we? Of course, sir. I'll have Marcus retrieve it. No. Rourke's voice was gentle but firm. You'll bring it to me, personally, along with the fresh bottle. I insist. There was no way to refuse without making the situation worse. Olivia nodded, gathered the stained linens as best she could, and retreated from the room. Her hands didn't stop shaking until she reached the service station. What happened in there? Sophia had returned, her face tight with concern. Marcus looks like he's about to have a heart attack. I spilled wine. All over the table. All over Michael Rourke's table. Sophia's eyes widened. Dios mío. Are you okay? Did they want me to continue serving them, Olivia said, the absurdity of it striking her. And they want to keep the contaminated bottle. Contaminated? Olivia met her friend's eyes. I smelled something wrong with it, Sophia. Something really wrong. And I think someone at that table knows exactly what it was. Understanding dawned on Sophia's face, followed quickly by fear. Olivia, listen to me. Whatever you think you know, forget it. These aren't the kind of people you get involved with. Finish your shift, go home, and I can't just forget. If someone attempted something serious in there, then it's not your problem. Sophia gripped Olivia's shoulders. You have a future ahead of you. School, a real career. Don't throw it away trying to be a hero. These men, they have long memories and longer reach. But even as Sophia spoke, Olivia knew she was already too far into this. The moment she'd smelled that bitter almond scent, the moment she'd stopped Rourke from drinking, she'd crossed a line. There was no going back to invisibility now. Marcus appeared with a fresh bottle and new linens, his face grim. Are you sure you want to continue? He asked Olivia quietly. I can take over. No, she heard herself say. I'll finish what I started. She gathered everything. The new bottle, the old one, fresh linens, clean glasses, and returned to the private room. The men were in the middle of a heated conversation that stopped the moment she entered. Ah, our chemist returns, Rourke said. Please, proceed. Olivia worked quickly, replacing the soiled linens with fresh ones, setting out new glasses. She poured the wine with steady hands. This bottle smelled clean, rich with the proper notes of berry and spice, no bitter undertones, no metallic edge. As she worked, she was acutely aware of the dynamics in the room. Marco wouldn't meet her eyes. Vincent watched her every move with undisguised suspicion. And Rourke studied her like a puzzle he was determined to solve. This one is better? He asked as she poured his tasting portion. Yes, sir. This is as it should be. He tasted it, nodded approval, and indicated she should pour for the others. As she moved around the table, she noticed details she'd missed before. Marco's hands were shaking slightly as he reached for his glass. Vincent had positioned himself with a clear view of the door, and on the table, partially hidden beneath a napkin, was a phone that hadn't been there before, its screen showing a text message that was quickly hidden when she glanced at it. Someone in this room had poisoned that first bottle, or someone outside this room had done so and one of these men knew about it. Either way, Olivia had just prevented something significant, and everyone at this table understood it. Will there be anything else, gentlemen? She asked when all glasses were filled. Actually, yes, Rourke said. I'd like you to remain nearby this evening, in case we need anything. Is that acceptable, Olivia Barnes? She hadn't given him her last name, which meant he'd already found out who she was, probably during the few minutes she'd been retrieving the fresh bottle. The realization sent ice through her veins. Of course, sir, I'll be just outside. Excellent. Oh, and Olivia? That contaminated bottle, have it sent to my car. I really would like to have it analyzed. For quality control, as I said. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Olivia understood several things with perfect clarity. First, Rourke knew she'd saved his life. Second, he intended to discover who had attempted to harm him. And third, she was now tied to whatever would happen next, whether she wanted to be or not. Right away, sir. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of anxiety. Olivia remained stationed near the private room, attending to the table's needs while trying not to think about what was being discussed behind those closed doors. She brought appetizers, carpaccio, burrata, grilled octopus, and cleared plates with mechanical efficiency. She refreshed water glasses and bread baskets, all while feeling the weight of Vincent's suspicious glares and Marco's nervous energy. The other diners in Valentino's main room were oblivious to the drama unfolding mere feet away. They laughed over their entrees, celebrated anniversaries and business deals, took photos of their food for social media. Normal people living normal lives, untouched by the dangerous currents that Olivia had stumbled into. Around 9:30, the private room's door opened and Marco emerged. His face was pale, his earlier nervousness transformed into something closer to panic. He brushed past Olivia without a word and headed toward the restaurant's rear exit, the one that led to the alley. "Excuse me," Olivia called after him. "Sir, did you need something?" He didn't respond, just pushed through the door and disappeared into the night. Vincent appeared in the doorway moments later. Did he say where he was going? "No, sir. He just left." Vincent cursed under his breath and pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. From inside the private room, Olivia heard Rourke's voice. "Let him go, Vincent. We'll deal with it later. For now, we have more important matters to discuss." The evening continued. Entrees were served. A perfectly cooked ribeye for Rourke, Chilean sea bass for Vincent. They ate in relative silence now, the earlier business conversation apparently concluded, or perhaps postponed, given Marco's abrupt departure. It wasn't until after 10 o'clock, as Olivia was clearing the dessert plates, that Rourke finally addressed her directly again. "Your father," he said, making it sound like they were in the middle of an ongoing conversation. The toxicologist. What was his name? Every instinct told Olivia to lie, to protect her father's memory from whatever this was. But something in Rourke's tone suggested he already knew the answer and was testing her honesty. "James Barnes," she said quietly. "Dr. James Barnes." Rourke exchanged a glance with Vincent. "I thought so. He did some consulting work for various organizations in the city, didn't he? About 7 years ago. He consulted for several companies, yes. Testing products for contamination, analyzing chemical compounds. It was part of his private practice. And he passed away when you were 21? The question felt like a violation, like hands rifling through her private memories. "Yes, sir. An accident in his laboratory. A gas leak. How unfortunate," Rourke said, and something in his tone made Olivia look up sharply. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes held a knowledge that made her chest tighten. Accidents in laboratories. So easy to arrange, so difficult to prove otherwise. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Olivia's hands clenched around the dessert plates she was holding. "If you'll excuse me, sir, I need to get these to the kitchen." "Of course. But Olivia," she paused at the door. "You have excellent instincts. Your father taught you well. That's a valuable gift. But it's also a dangerous one. Knowing too much, seeing too much, smelling too much." He smiled without humor. "These abilities can complicate a person's life. Do you understand what I'm telling you?" "I understand, sir." "Good. Then we understand each other. Vincent will settle the bill. And Olivia, thank you for your exceptional service this evening. Your attention to detail has been noted." The words sounded like both a compliment and a warning. When they finally left around 11 o'clock, Olivia felt like she'd aged 10 years. Marcus appeared at her elbow as she watched Rourke's black town car pull away from the curb. "You're done for the night," he said. "Go home, Olivia. And tomorrow take the day off. Paid. Marcus, I need the hours. It's not a request. Go home, rest, and think very carefully about whether you want to continue working here." She changed in the locker room in a daze, her mind replaying every moment of the evening. The bitter almond scent, Rourke's penetrating gaze, Marco's panicked exit, and most disturbing of all, Rourke's casual mention of her father's passing, the suggestion that it hadn't been an accident at all. The February cold hit her like a wall when she stepped outside, but Olivia welcomed it. She needed something real, something sharp and immediate to cut through the surreal fog of the past few hours. She'd walked 2 blocks toward the subway when she realized someone was following her. It wasn't obvious, just the subtle sense of footsteps matching her pace, staying precisely half a block behind. Olivia picked up her speed, her heart hammering. She thought about running, about screaming, about ducking into one of the late-night delis that lined the street. But then a car pulled alongside her, the same black town car that had carried Rourke away from Valentino's. The rear window rolled down smoothly, revealing the man himself. "Get in," Rourke said. It wasn't a request. Olivia stopped walking, every muscle in her body screaming at her to run. But Vincent had emerged from the shadows behind her, blocking that option. She was trapped between them on a Manhattan street at 11:30 at night, with no witnesses who would matter. "I just want to go home," she said, hating how her voice shook. "And you will. I'm offering you a ride. It's cold, you're tired, and Brooklyn is a long subway ride from here. Consider it a thank you for your service tonight. I'll take the subway." "Olivia," his tone hardened, "I'm going to be direct with you because I think you're smart enough to appreciate directness. You saved my life tonight. You recognized something in that wine that most people wouldn't have noticed, and you acted on your instincts despite the obvious risks to yourself. That took courage. It also made you very interesting to me. I don't want to be interesting to you, Mr. Rourke." He smiled, a genuine expression this time. "Too late. Now get in the car. We need to talk, and I'd prefer to do so somewhere warm rather than on a street corner in February." Olivia looked at Vincent, then at Rourke, then at the empty street stretching away in both directions. She thought of her father, of the accident that had claimed him. She thought of the life she'd worked so hard to build, the future she'd been fighting for, and she thought of the bitter almond scent, And what would have happened if she'd chosen to be invisible? She got in the car. The interior of Michael Rourke's car smelled of leather and expensive cologne, sandalwood mixed with something darker, more complex. Olivia sat rigidly in the plush seat, keeping as much distance as possible between herself and the man who now controlled her immediate future. Vincent had taken the front passenger seat, leaving her alone in the back with Rourke, separated from the driver by a privacy partition that had already been raised. "Where are we going?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Brooklyn, as promised," Rourke replied, scrolling through something on his phone. "Your address is 247 Prospect Avenue, apartment 3B, correct?" The fact that he knew where she lived sent a chill down her spine. "How did you—" "Olivia, let's establish something right now. I make it my business to know things. It's how I've survived this long in a world where information is currency and ignorance is fatal." He looked up from his phone, his blue eyes reflecting the passing streetlights. "You impressed me tonight. Not just with your keen senses, but with your quick thinking under pressure. Those are rare qualities. I just didn't want anyone to get hurt." "Yes, and that's what makes you different. Most people in your position would have looked the other way. Self-preservation is a powerful instinct." He pocketed his phone and turned to face her fully. "But you couldn't do that, could you? Because your father taught you something more important than self-preservation. He taught you to pay attention, to care about consequences." "Don't talk about my father," Olivia said, surprised by the edge in her own voice. "Why not? He was a remarkable man. Dr. James Barnes, one of the finest toxicologists in the city. He consulted for hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, law enforcement. He had a gift for identifying chemical compounds that others missed." Rourke paused. Much like his daughter, the car turned onto FDR Drive, heading south toward the Brooklyn Bridge. The East River stretched black and infinite beside them, dotted with lights from passing barges. Olivia watched the water, trying to organize her racing thoughts. 7 years ago," Rourke continued, "your father was hired to analyze some samples for a manufacturing company in Queens. Routine quality control, or so he thought. But he discovered something irregular, trace elements that shouldn't have been there, contamination that seemed deliberate rather than accidental." Olivia's hands clenched in her lap. "How do you know about that?" "Because the company he was investigating had certain connections to people I knew. Your father was thorough, honest, and unfortunately for him, incorruptible. He planned to report his findings to the authorities." Rourke's expression was unreadable. 2 weeks later, there was a gas leak in his laboratory. The police ruled it accidental. Case closed. The words hit Olivia like physical blows. She'd suspected, had nightmares about it for years, but hearing it confirmed, hearing it stated so matter-of-factly, made her stomach turn. "You're saying someone ended his life because he found evidence of contamination?" "I'm saying that in my world, people who ask too many questions or know too many answers often find themselves facing unfortunate accidents. Your father was a good man who stumbled into a bad situation, and tonight history nearly repeated itself. Except this time, you were the one who saw too much." "Then why am I still sitting here?" The question came out sharper than Olivia intended. "If knowing too much is so dangerous, why tell me any of this?" Rourke smiled. Not the predatory expression from the restaurant, but something almost respectful. "Because unlike most people who find themselves in possession of dangerous information, you've already proven you can handle it. You recognized the threat in that wine. You acted without panicking. And you've managed to avoid asking the obvious question." "What question?" "Who poisoned the wine?" The car fell silent except for the hum of tires on pavement. Olivia realized she'd been so focused on survival, on getting through the evening intact, that she hadn't fully processed the implications. Someone at that table, or someone with access to that table, had attempted something terrible, and that person was still out there. "Marco," she said quietly. "He left in such a hurry after you started asking questions. Very observant. Yes, Marco Castellano has some explaining to do. He's been my associate for 8 years. Handled logistics, managed relationships with our suppliers, demonstrated loyalty time and again. And yet tonight he became extremely nervous the moment you prevented me from drinking that wine. Then he fled. Maybe he was scared because he knew someone was targeting you. Maybe he was trying to protect himself. Or maybe—" Vincent's voice came from the front seat, rough and skeptical. "He was the one who arranged it. Which means your little performance tonight disrupted a carefully planned operation." Rourke held up a hand, silencing Vincent. "We don't know that yet. What we do know is that someone wanted me compromised during tonight's meeting." The timing was specific, right before we sealed a significant business arrangement. The method was sophisticated, poison that most people can't even detect, and the delivery required inside access to Valentino's. The car crossed the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan skyline receding behind them like a photograph. Olivia watched the city lights blur through the window, trying to process everything she was hearing. "There's something you need to understand," Rourke said. "Tonight's incident wasn't random, it was a message, an attempt to disrupt the balance of power in certain business circles. Whoever orchestrated it invested considerable resources in planning. They won't simply abandon their goal because one attempt failed. What does that have to do with me? Everything, because you're now a witness to that attempt. More than that, you're the person who prevented it, which means the people behind this have to make a decision about you. Are you a threat they need to eliminate? A loose end they need to tie up? Or are you simply a waitress who got lucky?" The implications settled over Olivia like a heavy blanket. She thought of her apartment, her classes, the life she'd built through sheer determination. All of it suddenly felt fragile, temporary, like a sandcastle facing an incoming tide. "I won't say anything to anyone," she said quickly. "I'll forget tonight ever happened. I'll quit Valentino's, find work somewhere else. That won't be sufficient, I'm afraid." Rourke's tone was almost apologetic. "The moment you interfered, you became part of this story. You can't simply exit the narrative and expect everyone to forget you existed. Then what am I supposed to do? For now, you continue your life as normally as possible. You go to your classes, you work your shifts, though perhaps at a different restaurant as you suggested. You maintain your routines, but you also remain alert. You pay attention to who's around you, who's asking questions, anything that seems out of place." "You want me to be bait?" Olivia said, the realization crystallizing. "You think whoever tried to poison you will come after me to find out what I know. I prefer to think of it as being prepared, and you won't be unprotected. I have people who will keep an eye on your safety, discreetly of course. You won't see them, but they'll be there." The car pulled up outside Olivia's building, a converted brownstone that had seen better decades. The neighborhood was quiet at this hour, most windows dark. A few restaurants and bodegas still lit along Prospect Avenue. "One more thing," Rourke said as Olivia reached for the door handle. "The compound you detected in that wine, the bitter almond scent. Where did you learn to identify it?" Olivia hesitated, then decided honesty was her best strategy. "My father. He used to quiz me on different chemical signatures. Said it was important to recognize dangerous substances by smell alone, because sometimes visual inspection isn't enough. Cyanide was one of the first he taught me because it's so distinctive. Most people can't smell it, but those who can never forget it. And you've encountered it before? Besides in your father's lessons?" The question was casual, but Olivia sensed the weight behind it. "Once, 3 years ago, I was working at a coffee shop in the village. A customer complained that her coffee smelled off. I recognized the scent immediately. Someone had tampered with her drink. We called the authorities, but by the time they arrived, the person who'd given her the cup had disappeared. They never caught whoever did it." Rourke absorbed this information with a slight nod. "You have a dangerous talent, Olivia Barnes. The ability to detect threats that others miss. In a different world, you'd be an asset to law enforcement or corporate security. In this world," he let the sentence hang unfinished. "In this world, it just makes me a target," Olivia completed. "Perhaps. Or perhaps it makes you valuable. Time will tell." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a business card. Plain white with nothing but a phone number embossed in black. "If you notice anything unusual, if you feel threatened in any way, you call this number. Any time, day or night. Someone will answer." Olivia took the card reluctantly, feeling its weight like an anchor. "And if I don't want your protection? If I just want to go back to my normal life? Then I wish you luck." "But Olivia?" He waited until she met his eyes. "Normal ended the moment you smelled bitter almonds in that wine. The question now isn't whether you're involved. It's how you choose to navigate that involvement. Wisely, I hope." Vincent opened her door from outside, a clear dismissal. Olivia stepped out into the February cold, clutching her bag and the business card that felt like a contract written in invisible ink. She watched the car pull away, its taillights disappearing around the corner. Then she climbed the steps to her building, unlocked the outer door with shaking hands, and trudged up 3 flights of stairs to her apartment. The space was small, a studio with a kitchen alcove and a bathroom barely large enough for its fixtures, but it was hers. She'd furnished it with thrift store finds and IKEA basics, decorated it with photographs and her father's old periodic table poster. It was supposed to be her sanctuary, her safe place. Tonight, it felt like a cage. Olivia dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed onto her second-hand couch. The events of the evening replayed in her mind like a film stuck on loop. The scent of the poison, Rourke's penetrating gaze, Marco's panicked exit, the revelation about her father's work and what had really happened 7 years ago. Her phone buzzed. A text from Sophia. "Are you okay? What happened after they left?" Olivia stared at the message, trying to decide how to respond. What could she say? That she'd been driven home by the man whose life she'd saved. That she was now apparently entangled in some kind of business conflict that she didn't understand and didn't want any part of. She typed back, "I'm fine. Long night. Talk tomorrow?" The response came immediately. "Yes. Be careful, Liv. Please." Olivia set her phone aside and walked to her small window, looking out over the quiet street below. A car was parked across the street. Dark sedan, tinted windows. She watched it for several minutes, waiting for movement, but it remained still. Was that one of Rourke's people watching over her? Or was it someone else, someone with different intentions? She pulled the curtains closed and tried to shake off the paranoia. But as she prepared for bed, going through her nightly routine with mechanical motions, Olivia couldn't stop thinking about her father, about the work he'd done, the evidence he'd found, the accident that had claimed him. She'd been 21, finishing her junior year of college, planning to follow him into chemistry. The authorities had called it a tragic mishap, a faulty valve, a gas leak, a laboratory accident that could have happened to anyone. Her father's colleagues had expressed sympathy. The university had held a memorial service, and Olivia had been left with student loans, grief, and a gnawing suspicion that something wasn't right. But she'd been young, overwhelmed, and alone. She'd pushed those suspicions aside, convinced herself that tragedy was often random and senseless. She'd left school, taken whatever job she could find, and tried to survive. Now, 7 years later, Michael Rourke had confirmed what she'd feared all along. Her father had been eliminated because he knew too much. And tonight, Olivia had walked the same path, seeing something she wasn't supposed to see, knowing something that made her dangerous. Sleep came fitfully, filled with dreams of bitter almonds and her father's voice explaining chemical compounds. In the dreams, he was trying to warn her about something, but his words were muffled, indistinct, drowned out by the sound of gas hissing from invisible valves. She woke at 6:30, exhausted but unable to stay in bed. The morning light filtered through her curtains, and when she looked outside, the dark sedan was gone. Had it ever really been there? Or had exhaustion and stress made her imagine things? Her phone showed 3 missed calls from a number she didn't recognize. No voicemails, just the calls themselves, spaced about an hour apart, starting at 4 in the morning. Olivia's hands shook as she checked her other messages. One from Marcus. "Take care of yourself. Your paycheck will be direct deposited as usual." One from her chemistry professor. "Reminder, exam next Tuesday. Study group meeting Sunday if you need it." And one from an unknown number. "We need to talk. Meet me at Prospect Park, Grand Army Plaza entrance, 9 a.m. Come alone. Monsieur Marco, the man who'd fled the restaurant last night. The man Rourke suspected of involvement in the poisoning attempt. He wanted to meet with her alone in a public place." Every instinct screamed at Olivia to delete the message, to call Rourke's number, to stay locked in her apartment. But another part of her, the part that had inherited her father's curiosity and commitment to truth, wanted answers. Why had Marco run? Was he guilty or scared? Had he tried to harm Rourke, or had he discovered who did and panicked? She had 2 hours to decide. Olivia showered, made coffee, tried to eat toast that tasted like cardboard. She pulled out the business card Rourke had given her, studied the embossed number. All she had to do was call, tell them about Marco's message. Let Rourke's people handle it. But if Marco was innocent, calling Rourke might put him in danger. And if he was guilty, meeting him might give Olivia information that could protect her in the long run. Knowledge was power. Her father had taught her that. The more she understood about what happened last night, the better equipped she'd be to navigate whatever came next. At 8:30, Olivia made her decision. She dressed in jeans, boots, and a warm jacket. She tucked Rourke's card into her back pocket along with her phone. She left a note on her counter just in case something went wrong, explaining where she'd gone and who she was meeting. Then she headed to Prospect Park. Grand Army Plaza was crowded even on a Saturday morning. Joggers circling the fountain, families heading to the park, vendors setting up their carts. The massive arch dominated the space, a monument to soldiers and victories from another era. Olivia positioned herself near the entrance, trying to look casual while scanning the crowd for Marco's face. He appeared at 9 o'clock exactly, emerging from behind a hot dog cart. He looked terrible, his expensive suit from last night replaced with jeans and a wrinkled shirt, his face haggard with exhaustion and stress. His eyes darted around constantly, checking for threats or witnesses. "Olivia," he said, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. Why did you want to meet?" "Because you saved Michael's life last night, and that means you're in danger. Serious danger." He gestured toward the park paths. "Walk with me. I need to make sure no one's following." They entered the park, joining the flow of pedestrians on the main path. Trees stretched overhead, their bare branches reaching toward the gray February sky. In the distance, Olivia could hear children playing, dogs barking, the normal sounds of a weekend morning that felt surreal given the circumstances. "I didn't poison that wine," Marco said abruptly. "I need you to know that first. I would never hurt Michael. He gave me opportunities when no one else would, trusted me when I had nothing. Whatever else I am, I'm not a traitor." "Then why did you run?" "Because I recognized the setup, the timing, the method, the whole situation. It was designed to make me look guilty. And I knew that once Michael started investigating, every moment I hesitated would look like confirmation of my guilt." Olivia studied his face, trying to read the truth in his expression. "If you didn't do it, who did? That's the question, isn't it?" Marco's laugh was bitter. "Michael has built a successful organization over 20 years. He's made alliances, established territories, created systems that keep things stable. But stability creates resentment. There are people who think they deserve what he has, people who want to see his empire fractured so they can claim the pieces. You're talking about rivals, other organizations. Not just rivals, competitors within his own structure, people who smile at meetings but sharpen knives in private." He stopped walking, turned to face her directly. "The wine was tampered with after it left the cellar. I watched the service staff prepare that table. Everything was clean, everything was proper. But between the time the bottle was selected and when you brought it to the table, someone had access." "Who? The staff? Other guests?" "Could be anyone. Valentino's has a dozen employees working any given night. Some have been there for years. Others are new. Any one of them could have been bribed or threatened into cooperation." Marco's hands clenched and unclenched nervously. "But here's what's really bothering me, the poison itself. Cyanide isn't easy to obtain. It requires connections, expertise, and most importantly, someone who knows their target well enough to understand what method would be effective." "Someone close to Rourke," Olivia said, the implication chilling. "Exactly, which is why I ran. Because if someone in Michael's inner circle is compromised, then nowhere near him is safe. Not for me and definitely not for you." They walked in silence for a moment, passing a playground where children swung and climbed, oblivious to the darker world being discussed nearby. "There's something else you need to know," Marco said quietly. "Your father, Dr. James Barnes. Michael told you about the consulting work he did, right? About the contamination he found?" Olivia's chest tightened. "He said my father discovered evidence of deliberate tampering, that it got him eliminated." "That's true. But what Michael probably didn't tell you is who your father was working for when he made that discovery. The company that hired him, the one with certain connections, it was a front operation. The contamination he found, it was in chemical shipments being processed through Queens and distributed to various locations. Your father had stumbled onto a major supply chain issue." "Supply chain for what?" Marco's expression turned grim. "Materials that certain organizations needed for their operations. Your father's discovery threatened to expose not just one company, but an entire network. That's why the response was so definitive. He didn't just threaten one person's interests, he threatened the interests of multiple powerful groups." The revelation made Olivia's stomach turn. Her father hadn't just been eliminated by one organization covering its tracks. He'd been eliminated because he'd accidentally uncovered something much bigger, something that required cooperation between multiple groups to hide. "And now history is repeating," she said softly. "Someone tried to poison Rourke, and I saw it happen, which means I'm a threat to whoever planned it. Worse than that, you're a witness who can identify chemical compounds. You have the same skills your father had, the same ability to see what others miss. To certain people, that makes you an ongoing liability. They won't just worry about what you saw last night. They'll worry about what else you might detect in the future. A jogger passed them, headphones in, completely absorbed in his music. Olivia envied his oblivious world where the morning's biggest concern was probably his pace or distance. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked Marco. "Rourke wants me to continue my normal life and stay alert. You're telling me that makes me a target. I can't just disappear. I have school, bills, responsibilities." "I know. That's why I wanted to meet, to warn you but also to offer help." Marco pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then showed her the screen. It displayed an address in Red Hook. "This is a safe location, a place where you can go if things get dangerous. No one knows about it except me. Not Michael, not Vincent, not anyone in the organization. If you ever feel threatened, if you even suspect someone's watching you, you go there. Understand?" Olivia memorized the address, committed it to memory with the same intensity her father had taught her to remember chemical formulas. "Why are you helping me?" "Because your father was a good man who got caught in something he didn't deserve. And because last night, you saved Michael without thinking about the consequences to yourself. That kind of instinctive decency is rare. I'd like to see it survive." He started to walk away, then paused. "One more thing. Be careful who you trust. Michael is a complicated man, honorable in his own way, but his world has different rules than yours. Vincent is loyal to Michael above everything else, which makes him dangerous to anyone he perceives as a threat. And there are others in the organization, people you haven't met yet, who will see you as either an asset to exploit or a problem to solve. What about you? Should I trust you?" Marco's smile was sad. "I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out myself. But I do know this. We both stumbled into something bigger than either of us understood. Maybe if we watch out for each other, we'll survive it." He disappeared into the crowd before Olivia could respond, leaving her standing alone on the path with more questions than answers. She pulled out her phone, considered calling Rourke's number to report the meeting, then decided against it. Knowledge was power, and right now the address Marco had given her was information that might save her life. Sharing it immediately would diminish its value. Instead, she called Sophia. "Liv, thank God. I've been worried sick. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Can you meet me? I need to talk to someone who's not—" Olivia struggled for the right words. "Someone who's not part of this situation." They arranged to meet at a diner in Park Slope, neutral territory where Olivia could decompress. As she walked there, she noticed a familiar dark sedan parked 2 blocks from the park entrance. Same model as the one from last night or a different one? She couldn't tell. The diner was warm and crowded, filled with the comforting smells of coffee and breakfast foods. Sophia was already there, occupying a corner booth with a pot of coffee and worried eyes. "Tell me everything," Sophia said, as Olivia slid into the seat across from her. And Olivia did, most of it anyway. She explained about the wine, about recognizing the poison, about Rourke's reaction and the car ride home. She left out some details, the more dangerous revelations about her father and the safe house address, but she shared enough to help Sophia understand the situation. "Dios mío," Sophia breathed when Olivia finished. "Liv, you need to go to the police. This is way beyond anything you should be handling alone. And tell them what? That I prevented someone from drinking poisoned wine at a private dinner? That a man gave me his business card and offered protection? I don't have evidence, Sophia. Just suspicions and my word against theirs. Then at least stay away from Valentino's. Marcus already gave you time off. Use it. Find a different job somewhere quiet and safe where men like Michael Rourke don't eat dinner." Olivia wanted to agree, wanted to believe it could be that simple, but she kept thinking about what Marco had said, that her skills made her an ongoing liability, that whoever orchestrated last night's attempt would worry about what else she might detect. Changing restaurants wouldn't change the fact that she'd already seen too much. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Hope you enjoyed your morning walk. The park is lovely this time of year, isn't it?" The message's casual tone couldn't mask its real meaning. Someone had been watching her meeting with Marco. Someone knew she'd gone to Prospect Park, knew she'd met with him, possibly even knew what they'd discussed. Olivia showed the text to Sophia, whose face went pale. "That's it," Sophia said firmly. "You're calling the police right now, or I'm calling them for you." But before Olivia could respond, her phone rang. The number was Rourke's, the one from the business card. She answered, her heart pounding. "Hello? Ms. Barnes." It wasn't Rourke's voice, but Vincent's, cold and flat. "We need you to come to a meeting. There have been developments regarding last night's incident. What kind of developments? The kind best discussed in person. A car will be at your location in 10 minutes. I trust you'll be ready? It wasn't really a question. Olivia looked at Sophia, at the worried concern in her friend's eyes, at the normal world of the diner continuing around them. Then she looked at her phone, at the threatening text message, at the business card for Rourke's number. She'd thought she could navigate this situation carefully, keep one foot in her normal life while dealing with the consequences of last night. But the threatening message proved that was impossible. The moment she'd smelled bitter almonds in that wine, she'd crossed a threshold. There was no going back. "I'll be outside," she told Vincent, and ended the call. "Olivia, no," Sophia started. "I don't have a choice. Whoever sent that text knows where I am right now. They know I met with Marco. If I run, they'll find me. If I hide, they'll wait me out. The only way through this is forward." She hugged Sophia tightly, drawing strength from her friend's warmth and concern. Then she left money for the coffee on the table, walked out of the diner into the cold February morning, and waited for the car that would take her deeper into a world she'd never wanted to enter. The sedan arrived exactly 10 minutes later, different from the one that had taken her home, or at least she thought it was different. How many identical black cars did Rourke's organization own? Vincent was in the back seat, his expression unreadable. "Get in." Olivia obeyed, sliding into the seat and pulling the door closed. The car pulled away from the curb immediately, heading toward the bridge in Manhattan beyond. "Where are we going?" she asked. "Somewhere secure. Michael wants to discuss your morning activities." Vincent's tone made it clear he knew exactly where she'd been and who she'd met with. "Marco Castellano reached out to you. That was foolish of him, and dangerous for you. He wanted to explain. He wanted to plant doubts, to make you question Michael's motives, to suggest that people within the organization can't be trusted. Classic manipulation tactics." Vincent turned to face her, his hard eyes showing no sympathy. "Let me be clear, Ms. Barnes. You're in this situation through no fault of your own. We understand that. But every decision you make from this point forward will determine how this ends for you. Meeting secretly with suspects, keeping information from us, attempting to navigate this alone. These are mistakes that could prove costly. I wasn't trying to hide anything. I just wanted to understand what happened. Understanding is Michael's responsibility, not yours. Your responsibility is to stay safe and stay honest with us. Can you do that?" Olivia nodded, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. How could she stay honest when the situation demanded constant calculation, when every conversation felt like walking through a minefield? They crossed back into Manhattan, but instead of heading to Valentino's or any obvious location, the car wound through the financial district, eventually pulling into an underground parking garage beneath a nondescript office building. Vincent led her to an elevator that required a key card to operate, then up to the 15th floor. The office they entered was minimalist and modern. Glass, steel, and expensive furniture arranged to project power and control. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of lower Manhattan and the harbor beyond. And standing at those windows, looking out over the water, was Michael Rourke. "Thank you, Vincent," he said without turning. "Give us the room, please." Vincent hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with leaving Olivia alone with Rourke, but he obeyed. The door closed with a soft click, and suddenly the space felt much smaller despite its size. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" Rourke said, still facing the windows. "I come here when I need to think clearly. Something about being above everything. Seeing the city from this perspective helps maintain clarity. You wanted to see me?" Olivia tried to keep her voice steady. "I wanted to understand why you felt the need to meet secretly with Marco Castellano this morning. After I specifically told you that continuing your normal life was the safest course of action." Now he turned, his expression more curious than angry. "What did he tell you?" Olivia made a split-second decision. Lying would be pointless. They clearly knew about the meeting, but she could be strategic about what she revealed. He wanted to explain that he didn't poison the wine. He thought the attempt was designed to make him look guilty. And he warned me that having my father's skills makes me a target, all of which I could have told you if you'd asked. Rourke moved away from the windows, settling into a chair and gesturing for Olivia to take the seat across from him. "What else?" "He gave me an address, a safe location in case I felt threatened." Rourke's eyebrows rose slightly. "Did he now? That's interesting. And did you share this address with Vincent?" "No." "Why not?" "Because Marco specifically said it was secret, that no one in your organization knew about it. Sharing it immediately seemed like," she struggled for the right words, "like burning a potential lifeline. To her surprise, Rourke smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his face. Smart, cautious but pragmatic. You're learning to think strategically, Olivia. That's good. You'll need that skill to survive what comes next. What does come next? That depends on several factors. We've been analyzing the wine you saved me from drinking. You were correct. It contained a lethal dose of cyanide, carefully mixed to be undetectable to most people. The sophistication of the delivery suggests professional expertise, someone with chemistry knowledge, access to restricted compounds, and detailed understanding of my habits and schedule. Marco said it had to be someone close to you. Marco says many things, not all of them reliable. But in this case, he's probably correct. Which brings us to our current dilemma. Rourke leaned forward, his expression serious. Someone in my organization attempted to eliminate me. That person is still out there, still dangerous, and now aware that you prevented their plan. They'll have to make decisions about you, whether you're simply an obstacle to remove or a larger threat to their continued operations. You're using me as bait, Olivia said, the accusation clear in her voice. I'm giving you the truth, yes? Your presence creates opportunities for our investigation. If the person responsible believes you're vulnerable, they may make mistakes trying to secure their position. But I'm also ensuring your safety. You have protection you can't see, monitoring you don't detect, and resources you haven't even imagined. And what do I get in return? Besides staying alive, I mean. Rourke studied her for a long moment, seeming to weigh his response carefully. What do you want, Olivia? And please, be honest. This is no time for false modesty or pretending you don't have desires. The question caught her off guard. What did she want? To finish school, to become a chemist like her father, to understand what really happened to him, to feel safe again. I want the truth about my father, she said finally. Not just what happened, but why. Who made the decision? Who carried it out? Whether there's any way to bring them to account. Justice, then. Or perhaps vengeance. The line between them is often blurry. Rourke nodded slowly. I can work with that. Here's what I'm offering. Help me identify who poisoned that wine, and I'll help you uncover what really happened to your father. I have resources, connections, access to information that you could never obtain on your own. Names, dates, details that were buried 7 years ago can be exhumed. And if I refuse, then you're on your own. No protection, no information, no buffer between you and whoever decides you're a problem worth solving. I won't actively harm you, but I also won't prevent others from doing so. You'll be adrift in very dangerous waters, and drowning is the most likely outcome. It wasn't really a choice, more like choosing between different kinds of danger. But at least Rourke's offer came with potential rewards, answers to questions that had haunted Olivia for 7 years. What do you need me to do? For now, exactly what Vincent said. Stay honest with us. Continue your life, but remain alert. If anyone approaches you, if you receive messages or threats, you report them immediately. You're not in this alone anymore, Olivia. You're part of an investigation now, whether you wanted to be or not. He stood, indicating the meeting was over. Vincent will take you home. Tomorrow, I'll have additional information about your father's case. We'll meet again, discuss what we've learned, and decide on next steps. In the meantime, stay safe. And Olivia, he waited until she met his eyes. Thank you for trusting me with the truth about Marco's safe house. That kind of honesty is rare and valuable. Don't lose it. The ride back to Brooklyn passed in silence. Olivia stared out the window, watching the city blur past, trying to process everything that had happened. In less than 24 hours, her entire life had transformed. She'd gone from anonymous waitress to witness, from struggling student to player in a dangerous game she didn't fully understand. When the car stopped outside her building, Vincent handed her a phone, small, sleek, different from her own. Keep this with you always, he instructed. It's encrypted, untraceable, and has direct lines to both Michael and myself. If anything happens, anything at all, you use this phone. Your personal phone may be compromised. Olivia took the device, feeling its weight like an anchor. Compromised by who? By whoever sent you that message this morning. By whoever is watching you. By anyone who wants to know what you know. Vincent's expression softened slightly, the first hint of empathy she'd seen from him. I know this is overwhelming, but you're stronger than you realize. You proved that last night. Hold on to that strength. You'll need it. Back in her apartment, Olivia finally allowed herself to collapse. She sat on her couch, staring at the 2 phones in her hands, her normal one and the encrypted device from Vincent. 2 phones representing 2 different lives, 2 different versions of herself. Her normal phone buzzed. "Sophia, are you okay? Please tell me you're okay." She typed back, "I'm safe. I'll explain everything when I can. Thank you for caring." Then she picked up the encrypted phone, scrolled through its minimal contacts, Rourke, Vincent, and a third entry labeled simply emergency, and wondered how long it would be before she needed to use them. Outside, the afternoon sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across Brooklyn. Olivia went to her window and looked down at the street. No dark sedans today, no obvious watchers, but she knew they were there. Invisible guardians or invisible threats, she couldn't be sure which. She thought about her father, about the last conversation they'd had before his passing. He'd been excited about a new consulting project, something important. She'd been too focused on her own college stress to pay attention to the details. What had he said? Something about contamination in shipping manifests, about trace elements that didn't match specifications. He'd known something was wrong. He'd told her he was going to report it, and 2 weeks later, he was gone. Now Olivia understood what he'd faced, the weight of dangerous knowledge, the impossible choice between silence and truth. He'd chosen truth, and it had cost him everything. What would she choose? Safety or justice? Invisibility or involvement? The encrypted phone buzzed. A message from Rourke. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start finding answers. Both of us deserve them." Olivia set both phones aside, drew her curtains, and tried to find some semblance of normalcy in her evening routine. But as she prepared for bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing at a crossroads, and the path she chose now would determine not just her immediate future, but the entire trajectory of her life. She fell asleep thinking about bitter almonds and her father's voice, about Michael Rourke's penetrating gaze and Marco's warning, about Vincent's hard pragmatism and the mysterious person who'd sent that threatening text. Tomorrow would bring answers, or more questions, or dangers she couldn't yet imagine. But tonight, at least, she was still alive, still fighting, still searching for truth in a world built on secrets. And somehow, that would have to be enough. Sunday morning arrived with unexpected snow, fat flakes drifting past Olivia's window, transforming Brooklyn into something clean and quiet. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying everything Rourke had told her, every warning Marco had given, every implication Vincent had made. The encrypted phone buzzed at 8 o'clock sharp. A message from Rourke. "Car arriving in 1 hour. Dress warmly. We have much to discuss." Olivia showered quickly, chose jeans and a sweater, and was waiting outside when the familiar black sedan pulled up. This time Rourke himself sat in the back seat. "Good morning," he said as she climbed in. "I hope you managed some rest." "Not much. Where are we going?" "Somewhere we won't be disturbed. I've been reviewing documents related to your father's case. What I've found is troubling." They drove to a warehouse in Red Hook, converted into high-end office space, secure and private. Inside, Rourke had assembled a conference room with files spread across a long table. Olivia recognized her father's handwriting on some of the documents. "These are his original reports," Rourke explained, "from the consulting work he did 7 years ago. The contamination he discovered wasn't accidental, it was systematic. Someone was deliberately adulterating chemical shipments, and your father documented everything." Olivia's hands trembled as she picked up one of her father's reports. His precise notes, his careful observations, his commitment to truth, all leading to his final days. "Who ordered the contamination?" she asked. "That's what we're going to find out. But Olivia, you need to understand. Learning this truth means accepting certain responsibilities. Once you know names, once you understand the full scope of what happened, you'll be in even more danger than you are now." "I don't care. I need to know." Rourke studied her face, seeming to measure her resolve. "Very well. But first we need to address last night's incident. The wine analysis revealed something interesting. The poison was prepared recently, within days of the attempt. Whoever did this planned it specifically for that dinner, which means they had advanced knowledge of the meeting." "Someone close to you," Olivia said, echoing Marco's words. "Yes, and that narrows our suspects considerably. I've initiated an internal review, quietly examining everyone who had access to that information. It's delicate work. One wrong move, and the guilty party disappears before we can identify them." Vincent entered with coffee and pastries, setting them on the table. "The surveillance footage from Valentino's arrived," he told Rourke. "You'll want to see this." They gathered around a laptop as Vincent played the footage. It showed the wine cellar, the service area, the path the bottle took from storage to Olivia's hands. And there, in a brief moment when the camera angle shifted, a figure in kitchen staff uniform slipped something into the bottle. "Can you identify them?" Olivia asked. "Not yet. The uniform obscures their face and they knew where the cameras were positioned. But we're analyzing body language, movement patterns, checking staff schedules against this timestamp." Rourke paused the video on the mysterious figure. "Whoever this is, they're professional, trained. This wasn't someone's first time tampering with substances." The implications settled heavily in the room. A professional operative within Valentino's staff, someone who'd infiltrated specifically to target Rourke, someone who remained unidentified and dangerous. "What now?" Olivia asked. "Now we wait," Rourke said. "Investigations take time, patience, careful observation. But while we wait, I'm going to share something with you." He pulled out another file, this one marked with her father's name. 3 people ordered the response to your father's discovery. 2 of them are no longer active in any business capacity. The third, he slid a photograph across the table. Olivia picked it up, studying the face of a distinguished-looking man in his 60s. His name is Richard Ashford. He runs several legitimate businesses but maintains connections to various underground operations. Your father's findings threatened one of his supply networks. Ashford made the decision to eliminate that threat. Olivia stared at the photograph, memorizing every detail of the face belonging to the man who'd orchestrated her father's demise. Can he be brought to justice? Legal justice? Unlikely. He's insulated by layers of protection, lawyers, and carefully maintained legitimacy. But there are other forms of accountability. Rourke's tone was careful, measured. That's a decision only you can make, and not one to be made hastily. I want him to pay for what he did. I understand. But revenge is a dangerous path, Olivia. Once you start down it, there's no simple way back to your normal life. I don't have a normal life anymore. That ended when I smelled bitter almonds in your wine. Rourke nodded slowly, something like respect flickering in his eyes. Then we proceed carefully, together. But first we solve the immediate problem, identifying who tried to poison me. Because, until we do, both of us remain in danger. They spent the next hour reviewing evidence, discussing possibilities, planning next steps. And with each passing minute, Olivia felt herself crossing further from the life she'd known into something darker, more complicated, and infinitely more dangerous. But she also felt something else, purpose. For the first time since her father's passing, she had direction, goals, and the resources to pursue them. Whatever came next, she would face it. Not as a victim, but as someone who'd chosen to fight back. The snow continued falling outside, covering everything in white, and Olivia wondered if she'd ever feel that clean again. 3 weeks passed in a strange limbo. Olivia continued her classes, studied for exams, and started working at a quiet cafe in Park Slope, far from Valentino's and the dangers it represented. But her other life, the one that began the night she saved Michael Rourke, continued in parallel. The encrypted phone buzzed regularly with updates. Vincent's team had identified the person in the kitchen uniform, a contract worker hired specifically for that evening, paid in cash, vanished without a trace. A professional, as they'd suspected, leaving no real trail to follow. But Rourke's investigation had uncovered something else. Marco Castellano had been receiving payments from an offshore account connected to Richard Ashford's business network, the same Richard Ashford who'd orchestrated her father's demise. The connection was too precise to be coincidental. On a cold March evening, Olivia received a message from Rourke. "We found him. Come to the office. It's time." The warehouse in Red Hook felt different tonight, charged with tension and purpose. Rourke, Vincent, and 2 other associates Olivia didn't recognize filled the conference room, and in a chair at the center, looking exhausted and defeated, sat Marco Castellano. "Olivia," Marco said when he saw her, his voice heavy with resignation. "I'm sorry. For everything." "Tell her," Rourke commanded, his tone leaving no room for evasion. Marco's story spilled out in broken pieces. He'd accumulated debts years ago, made poor decisions that left him vulnerable. Ashford's people had approached him 6 months earlier with an offer, information about Rourke's activities in exchange for money and debt forgiveness. It seemed harmless at first, just business intelligence, but then they'd asked for more. Access to schedules, details about security protocols, information about private meetings. By the time Marco realized what he'd become involved in, it was too late to extract himself. The wine was supposed to make Michael sick. Marco insisted, his eyes pleading. Not seriously hurt, just uncomfortable enough to postpone the meeting. They told me it was a harmless substance, that it would only cause brief illness. I didn't know about the poison until you stopped him from drinking. And you expect us to believe that? Vincent's voice was ice. I swear it's true. When Olivia prevented him from drinking, I realized how wrong I'd been. That's why I ran. Not from guilt over attempted harm, but from fear of what I'd accidentally facilitated. Olivia studied his face, trying to separate truth from desperate lies. The safe house you told me about, was that real or another manipulation? Real. I set it up months ago when I first realized how dangerous this situation had become. I wanted an escape route, somewhere even Ashford's people couldn't find me. Marco looked at Rourke. I know I betrayed your trust. I understand there are consequences, but I never wanted you seriously hurt. You have to believe that. Rourke was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally he spoke. I believe you didn't intend the outcome, but intentions matter less than actions, Marco. You provided information that enabled someone to target me. Your weakness, your poor judgment, these things have consequences. What happens now? Olivia asked quietly. Now Marco provides everything he knows about Ashford's operation. Names, contacts, methods of communication, payment structures. He cooperates fully with our investigation. Rourke's gaze never left Marco's face. And then he disappears. New city, new identity, new life. But he never returns to New York, never contacts anyone from his old life, never forgets what his mistakes cost him. It was exile, not forgiveness. But it was also mercy, more than many would have offered. What about Ashford? Olivia asked. He orchestrated all of this. The attempt on you, the manipulation of Marco, and 7 years ago, what happened to my father? Rourke turned to her and she saw something new in his expression. Respect mixed with concern. Richard Ashford will face accountability, not through courts or police, but through other channels. His business relationships will deteriorate. His operations will face unexpected complications. His reputation will suffer irreparable damage. He won't understand why everything is falling apart, but he'll spend his remaining years watching his empire crumble. That's not enough, Olivia said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. Perhaps not, but it's what's possible without destroying yourself in the process. Olivia, you have a choice to make. You can continue down this path, seeking more direct forms of justice and likely lose everything you've worked for. Your education, your future, your freedom. Or you can accept that sometimes accountability takes forms different than we'd prefer, and you can rebuild your life with the knowledge that your father's case has been addressed. It wasn't the dramatic confrontation she'd imagined. No courtroom revelation, no confession, no clear victory, just the messy reality of a world where justice was complicated and revenge carried too high a price. I want to move forward, Olivia said finally, but I also want to finish my degree, become the chemist my father wanted me to be. I want to use these skills he taught me for something meaningful. Then that's what you'll do. Rourke pulled out an envelope, slid it across the table. Inside is information about a scholarship fund, established in your father's name, fully funded, covering your remaining education expenses. Also, contact information for several research laboratories that would be interested in your particular talents. Legitimate opportunities, no strings attached. Olivia opened the envelope with trembling hands, saw the official documents, the scholarship letter, the research positions, a path forward, purchased with the currency of dangerous knowledge and uncomfortable compromises. Why? She asked. Why help me like this? Because you saved my life without hesitation. Because you have integrity in a world that usually punishes such things. And because your father deserved better than what happened to him. I can't undo that injustice, but I can ensure his daughter has the opportunities he wanted for her. Over the following months, Olivia's life slowly transformed. She finished her degree with honors, her father's scholarship eliminating the financial pressure that had defined her existence. She accepted a position at a pharmaceutical research laboratory, using her acute senses to detect contaminants and ensure product safety. She never saw Marco again. Vincent told her he'd relocated to Seattle, working under a new name in restaurant management, a quiet life far from the dangers of his past. Richard Ashford's business empire did indeed crumble, though the news reports attributed it to market forces and poor management decisions. Only Olivia knew the real cause, and she found surprising peace in that knowledge. She kept the encrypted phone, though it rarely buzzed anymore. Occasionally, Rourke would send brief messages, checking on her progress, sharing news about the investigation's aftermath, maintaining a connection that neither of them quite wanted to sever. On the anniversary of that February night at Valentino's, Olivia visited her father's grave. She brought flowers and a copy of her research publication, work on detecting chemical adulterants in pharmaceutical compounds. "I found the truth, Dad," she said quietly. "It wasn't the justice we deserved, but it was something. And I'm using what you taught me to make sure others don't face what you did. I hope that's enough." The wind carried her words away, and Olivia allowed herself to believe he'd heard them. She'd learned that survival sometimes meant accepting imperfect victories, that justice took many forms, not all of them satisfying, that the price of involvement in dangerous worlds was measured in compromises and complicated choices. But she'd also learned she was stronger than she'd ever imagined, that her father's legacy lived on through her work, and that even in darkness, there were people willing to show unexpected honor. As she walked away from the cemetery, Olivia's regular phone buzzed. Sophia inviting her to dinner, her study group confirming their meeting time, her lab supervisor praising her latest analysis. Normal life, rebuilt on foundations of extraordinary experience. She glanced back once at her father's headstone, then forward toward the future she'd fought to claim. The scent of bitter almonds would always remind her of the night everything changed, but now it also reminded her of her own strength, her capacity for survival, and the power of choosing to act when silence would have been easier. Olivia Barnes had breathed in danger and exhaled determination, and somehow, against all odds, she'd survived to tell the story.